Tonight, suspect at large. A deadly shooting in a Montana bar. Officials reporting 4 dead at the scene. The shooter on the run, believed to be armed and extremely dangerous. President Trump fires the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics hours after the agency reported that U.S. job growth had slowed to a near halt. Numbers the president says are fake. This on the same day Trump called the head of the Federal Reserve a stubborn moron and signed an executive order imposing sweeping new tariffs on dozens of countries, the stock market taking a hit. The president shortens the deadline for Russia to make a peace deal with Ukraine, repositioning 2 nuclear submarines after what he called highly provocative statements from the former Russian president. That statement that the president's new deadline placed on Russia is an additional step toward war. Canadian wildfires send smoke across the Midwest, prompting alerts for dangerous breathing conditions for millions. Flood threats also in effect this weekend for the Carolinas and Texas, along with heat alerts for the South. And a new ballroom for the White House? Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt announcing that construction of a new ballroom at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue will begin next month. The president long calling for a larger event space, but the price tag for this construction, $200 million. Who's paying for this renovation?
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephanie Ramos. Thank you so much for streaming with us. It is a busy Friday night, and we are tracking that shocking move by President Trump to fire the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics after disappointing job numbers. But first, we begin with a mass shooting in a small Montana town and the search for the shooter. Tonight, authorities are trying to piece together why someone went into a bar in Anaconda, Montana, and started firing. At least 4 people are dead. Also tonight, to a separate manhunt in Tennessee. Authorities looking for a suspect accused of killing a family of 4. Their baby found abandoned on the front lawn of a home. Trevor Alt leads us off with more.
Tonight, an urgent manhunt for an active shooter who authorities say killed 4 people in western Montana. The Deer Lodge County Law Enforcement Center says Michael Paul Brown is believed to be armed and dangerous. They say he first opened fire inside a bar in the town of Anaconda and was last seen in the Stumptown area 6 miles away. And tonight, in northwest Tennessee, another active manhunt. Officials offering a $15,000 reward as they search for 28-year-old Austin Robert Drummond, saying he murdered a family of 4 and then kidnapped and abandoned their infant.
It appears, with all the information that we have, is that this was a targeted incident.
They say Drummond was last spotted 80 miles south in Jackson, and they've recovered his white Audi. They're urging residents to stay alert.
And ABC's Trevor Alt joins us now. Trevor, back to the Montana shooting. Do we have any idea what the motive there was?
Well, Stephanie, officials say so far it's not clear what circumstances led to this gunman opening fire. What we do know is afterwards, when he went on the run, this small town of Anaconda immediately went into lockdown. And we've also heard from the governor of Montana. He says he's monitoring this situation. He called it a tragedy. Stephanie?
Oh, so sad. All right, Trevor, thank you so much. Next tonight, President Trump lashing out, firing a Labor Department official after a disappointing jobs report. That report released just hours after the president slapped new tariffs on dozens of countries. The 1-2 punch triggering a stock market slide. This morning, that disappointing jobs report, just 73,000 jobs added last month. Unemployment ticking up to 4.2%. And the shocker that numbers for May and June revised sharply down, losing 258,000 jobs combined. We have the nonpartisan Yale Budget Lab standing by with what it all means. But first, Chief Washington correspondent Jonathan Karl reports from Washington.
Today, President Trump abruptly fired the nonpartisan economist responsible for government statistics on the job market, claiming without providing evidence that today's weaker than expected jobs report was, quote, manipulated.
Mr. President, why did you fire the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics?
Because I think her numbers were wrong, just like I thought her numbers were wrong before the election, days before the election.
The now fired BLS Commissioner Erica McIntyre was confirmed by the Senate in January 2024 by an overwhelming bipartisan vote, 86-8. Then Senator J.D. Vance voted for her. Her firing came shortly after today's jobs report showed that the unemployment rate has risen to 4.2%, with the economy adding just 73,000 jobs in July, less than expected. The Bureau of Labor Statistics also revised the job numbers for the last 2 months, as it often does, saying there were over 250,000 fewer jobs created in May and June than previously thought.
I believe the numbers were phony.
The president claimed, without providing evidence, that the numbers were rigged to make him look bad. She will be replaced with someone much more competent and qualified, Trump declared on social media. Important numbers like this must be fair and accurate. They can't be manipulated for political purposes. But many economists expressed alarm at the firing, worried that it is now President Trump who is trying to manipulate the numbers. And at least one Republican senator, a Trump ally, suggested Trump's move was, quote, impetuous.
It's not the statistician's fault if the numbers are accurate and that they're not what the president had hoped for.
All this after the president announced a new wave of tariffs set to go into effect next week, raising the tax on imported products from nearly 70 countries. That, coupled with the jobs report, sent the stock market tumbling today. The Dow losing 2.9% this week, its worst week since early April, when Trump's trade war began. But Trump's tariffs are now facing serious legal challenge, a federal appeals court raising questions about whether the president has the authority to impose the across-the-board tariffs without congressional approval.
And Jonathan Karl joins us now from the White House. John, this all comes as Trump ramps up his criticism against Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, and there's been a shakeup there today. Tell us what happened.
Stephanie, Adriana Kugler, she's one of 7 members of the Fed's Board of Governors and a Biden appointee, announced today that she will resign effective next week. She didn't give a reason why, although her term was expiring in January, and her departure gives President Trump a little early a chance to name a new Fed governor, giving him perhaps some more influence over the Fed, and also the opportunity to appoint somebody who could be a replacement for Jerome Powell when his term as chairman expires next year. Stephanie?
We will see what happens. John Karl for us at the White House. John, thank you.
Thank you.
Joining us now for more is the president and co-founder of the nonpartisan Yale Budget Lab, Natasha Soren. Thank you so much for your time. The Yale Budget Lab has analyzed job numbers for a really long time from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. As you know, the head was just fired. Are you concerned at all by this?
I am deeply concerned by this, and I think there are real long-lasting ramifications to these attempts to politicize what is one of the shining stars of the United States and makes us the envy of the world, which is the fact that our government data is so incredibly valuable and also collected painstakingly by career civil servants who dedicate themselves to the task of trying to inform the public about the ways in which the economy is evolving. And the idea that a particular set of data or results that administration officials aren't happy to see, which, to be clear, reflect the reality of the world we're in now, that these broad-based tariffs have been imposed, cause individuals to be fired, is not what happens in a democracy where there's trust and faith in institutions.
Yeah, and hopefully this firing won't have long-lasting repercussions. We will see. Now, what is your take on the job numbers out today?
I think what we're learning about the labor market, and frankly, what we're learning about the economy writ large, is that these tariffs are really starting to bite. And if you look at where we are today, we have effective tariff rates in the economy that are at about 18%. When President Trump took office, that number was closer to 2.5%. And what we find is that as a result of these tariffs, you are going to see a consistently smaller economy. You are going to see 500,000 fewer jobs in the economy. You are going to see higher prices to the tune of about $2,400 of price increases for the average American family. And what we learned this week is all of that is starting to happen. The labor market is weakening and inflation is going up.
So would you say the Trump tariffs are starting to officially hit the economy?
I don't have to just say it. I can point you to the data that shows it. If you look at the inflation number from this week, it reflects the largest increase in durables goods inflation in a 6-month period in any 6 months since in the last 4 decades, absent the pandemic. And durable goods are things like furniture, they're things like consumer electronics.
Okay, let's talk about what families will lose under these new tariffs. The Yale Budget Lab is out with analysis showing just how much families will lose per year under all the new tariffs. When will families start to really feel the pinch?
What's interesting and important to understand is that these tariffs are incredibly broad-based on a broad swath of countries, but also on literally everything that consumers buy. And so our estimates are able to actually look sector by sector to tell you things like apparel prices are going to go up by some 35% as a result of these tariffs, and computer prices are going to go up by some 20% as a result of these tariffs. And importantly, what we learned from the data this week is that the prices are already starting to rise in these tariff impacted sectors. But if you listen to what businesses are saying, they are in fact telegraphing that price increases are already happening or on the horizon. It's true for car makers like GM. It is true for retailers like Walmart or like Munchkin, which makes things like diaper pails and other children's types of durable goods, where they're explaining that they simply cannot absorb an increase in tariffs by like 8 times over such a short time span.
Yeah, we'll see how high they go. Thank you so much, Natasha Soren. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Next tonight, President Trump issued a new warning to Russia and repositioned 2 U.S. nuclear submarines after what he called highly provocative statements by Russia's former president, Dmitry Medvedev. Meantime, President Trump has given Vladimir Putin 1 more week to negotiate peace with Ukraine or face new sanctions. Here's ABC's chief global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz.
Tonight, in a rare and extraordinary warning to Russia, President Trump ordering 2 U.S. nuclear submarines to the region.
A threat was made, and we didn't think it was appropriate, so I have to be very careful. So I do that on the basis of safety for our people.
That threat Trump was talking about, a post on social media from the former Russian president about unleashing Russia's nuclear arsenal. Trump saying he repositioned the submarines just in case these foolish and inflammatory statements are more than just that, adding words can often lead to unintended consequences. The war of words only escalating since Trump took office. And so has the war in Ukraine, the war President Trump had said he would end in the first 24 hours of his presidency. More than 6 months later, it has only gotten worse, and President Trump's patience is growing thin, now threatening new sanctions on Russia in the coming days.
Russia? I think it's disgusting what they're doing. I think it's disgusting.
The president did not say what kind of nuclear submarines he deployed to the region, but the U.S. already has nuclear ballistic missile subs circling the globe. We were aboard the USS Maine in 2022 when the commander of submarine forces told us Russian subs are always being watched.
We know when there's Russians underway at all times. We track that very, very closely.
And Martha Raddatz joins us now. Martha, how much of this is saber rattling?
Well, Stephanie, this may all be saber rattling, but it is a very large saber. As you know, nuclear armed submarines are the most deadly, destructive warships on the planet. Stephanie?
Very dangerous. Martha, thank you so much. For more on this escalating war of words, we're joined by ABC contributor and retired Colonel Steve Ganyard. Thank you so much for joining us. President Trump has been so public with his threats against Russia. Is this a winning strategy to get what he wants from Putin?
Stephanie, it's actually kind of surprising because obviously Mr. Medvedev, who is one of Putin's attack dogs, but doesn't speak for the Russian government. It's surprising that the president actually took his bait here because he knows that this is not Putin speaking. And he knows that by moving submarines around, it's very hard for the Russians to verify that. And certainly the United States is not going to tell the Russians where those submarines are. So it's a bit of a threat without too much behind it. If the president really wanted to put the Russians on notice, he would have done something like put our land-based nuclear forces on higher alert. He would have put some nuclear-capable aircraft like B-2s, airborne, things that the Russians could verify. But in this case, Again, it's a bit surprising that the Russians, or that President Trump took the bait, took the taunt from Mr. Medvedev, who truly does not speak for anybody in Russia except himself.
And what are your thoughts? Could sanctions even deter Putin?
This will be decided next week. We know that the president has made it very clear that he's going to impose new sanctions, tougher sanctions against the Russians, and so there'll have to be some close dialogue between Mr. Putin and President Trump next week. So probably best that those two are not going in with any further irritation.
And do you expect to see Putin change course at all in light of these threats from President Trump?
I think it's a sideshow, Stephanie. You note that President Trump or President Putin did not weigh in on this discussion at all today. He stayed in the sideline. He knows that Medvedev is sort of the guy who spouts off and says very inflammatory things. And so unless Mr. Putin gets involved in this discussion, I think it'll probably be a sideshow. Next week is the big game.
And we've seen this back and forth before. Do you think we'll hear from Putin before this deadline of August 8th?
I doubt it. He needs a clean slate with President Trump. They have much more important things to think about. What President Trump is going to impose on Russia, will it be sanctions that include tougher economic sanctions, but also is he going to provide the Ukrainians with weapons that will allow them to range deeper into Russia, to be able to take the war to Russia in ways that Ukraine has not been able to up to now?
All right, we will see what happens. We will be watching this closely. Steve Ganyard for us tonight. Thank you so much, Steve. Appreciate it. As the humanitarian crisis in Gaza worsens, top U.S. officials on the ground there visited an aid site backed by Israel and the U.S. We're now learning about their meetings amid an urgent push for a ceasefire hostage deal. ABC's chief foreign correspondent Ian Pannell is in Israel.
Tonight, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Ambassador Huckabee visiting a controversial Gaza aid site backed by Israel and the U.S. Their trip coming as the humanitarian crisis deteriorates.
I spoke to Steve Witkoff. He had a great meeting with a lot of people, and the primary meeting was on food. And he also had some other conversations that I'll tell you about later. But he had a meeting on getting the people fed, and that's what we want.
But here's what the U.S. officials didn't see. This is the horrific reality of Gaza. Jana Rayad is 8 years old and weighs just 24 pounds. She's been treated for malnutrition before, but now her condition is deteriorating again. Nasma says bit by bit, I feel I'm slowly losing my daughter. American pediatrician Tom Adamkiewicz, speaking to ABC News from Nasser Hospital in Gaza, calling on U.S. officials to see what he's witnessing.
I've seen those children with my own eyes. And so I would call for the United States ambassador to come here, come and see for yourself what's going on here.
Such troubling images. Our thanks to Ian Pannell for that report. Shifting to weather now, the torrential rains and deadly flash flooding has stopped in the Northeast, but there are still lingering effects of flights being canceled and delayed. A geyser, check this out, erupted in a Staten Island street as commuters escaped a flooded subway stop by climbing along the gates. And near Baltimore, a 13-year-old boy was swept into a drain pipe. Rescuers unable to save him. ABC's Morgan Norwood reports from New York tonight.
Tonight, cleanup across the Northeast after deadly storms wreaked havoc, inundating roadways and swamping public transit. Half a foot of rain in some areas, geysers of floodwater erupting on this street on New York's Staten Island. Water sloshing inside city buses. A manhole exploding. And Citizen app video from Brooklyn. Subway strap hangers gingerly holding on to anything they can as they make daring escapes out of stations. Water gushing out of cracks in the walls. East of Baltimore, first responders rescuing drivers in Joppatown, Maryland. And west of Baltimore, authorities in Mount Airy say a 13-year-old boy was swept into a drain pipe and drowned.
I worked diligently to try to get him out. Unfortunately, he had succumbed to his injuries before we were able to rescue him from the pipe.
The storm strangling airports across the region. More than 1,900 flights canceled Thursday and over 800 more today.
And as cleanup continues, these storms are giving way to a massive temperature drop, as much as 20 degrees in 24 hours. Steph, of course, a break from that humidity.
Morgan, thank you. All that rain brought a cool down for the Northeast, but how long will it last? Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg from our New York station WABC is tracking it for us. Hi there, Lee.
Hey, Stephanie. Wow, what a difference. We basically just skipped to September here in the New York area, and relief has arrived from the Midwest to the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. You know, the relief went to about I-20, but you still see all the extreme heat from New Orleans, Jacksonville, Tampa. It'll still feel like 100 to 110 over the weekend. So the same front that brought all that relief, it stalled over the south. So we have a flash flood risk, especially over the Carolinas, places like Charlotte, all the way over to Dallas, maybe some flight delays there. That'll continue through the weekend. The other concern, the poor air quality, the wildfire smoke from Canada, that's diving into the Midwest and Great Lakes over the weekend. The poorest air quality will be from Minnesota to Wisconsin to Michigan over the weekend, and even some haze will pour into the Northeast by Sunday. Stephanie?
All right. Thank you so much, Lee. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting will be shutting down operations next year, ending nearly 6 decades of broadcasting. The announcement comes after the GOP's move to rescind $1.1 billion in federal funding already allocated to the organization, which distributes grants to public media, PBS, and NPR. The president of CPB said public media has been one of the most trusted institutions in American life, and they're deeply grateful to their partners across the system. Almost 200,000 play kitchens are being recalled following the death of a toddler who was strangled on a hook. The popular play kitchen from KidCraft issued a voluntary recall after a 23-month-old got caught on a hook trying to climb through the back of it. KidCraft says they have not received any other reports of the hooks injuring a child or catching their clothing. Coming up, big changes at the White House with a price tag of $200 million. Who's picking up the check? We take a look by the numbers. And the revolutionary new technology tried for the first time in last night's football game, the first of the preseason. Why the NFL made the change. Those details coming up next.
The White House is one of the most beautiful and historic buildings in the world. Yet the White House is currently unable to host major functions, honoring world leaders in other countries without having to install a large and unsightly tent approximately 100 yards away from the main building's entrance.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt announced Thursday that construction of a new White House ballroom will begin this September. President Trump has long called for a larger event space, and now he'll put his own unique stamp on it. Let's take a look at renovations to the president's house by the numbers. The new White House State Ballroom will add a whopping 90,000 square feet of space and will be situated where the East Wing currently sits. According to the White House, it will seat 650 people, far more than the 200-person seated capacity in the East Room, which is used to host many of the larger events today. The ballroom project is expected to cost $200 million, which the president says will be funded by private donations. Construction of the White House began in 1792, built in large part by enslaved African Americans. It took 8 years to build originally and has been renovated numerous times since. The South Portico was built in 1824 during the presidency of James Monroe, and President Harry Truman added the iconic porch known as, you guessed it, the Truman Balcony in 1948. It was President Theodore Roosevelt who relocated the presidential offices from the residence to what is now the West Wing. And in 1952, President Harry Truman dismantled everything but the outer walls of the White House. The ballroom renovation follows the president's makeover of the White House Rose Garden. The lawn installed during the Kennedy administration is now a stone patio. Coming up, it starts as a simple computer pop-up window, then swindlers in an international fraud ring pose as federal agents to steal from victims across the country. A warning tonight from inside one of the most intricate scams authorities have ever seen. And a major setback for Tesla as its self-driving software is found partly to blame for a deadly car crash. Clicking on a pop-up ad on your computer could end with you handing over gold bars in a supermarket parking lot near your home. It's an international scheme that's costing some Americans their entire life savings. ABC News Investigates has spent the last few months working with ABC-owned stations WABC in New York and WLS in Chicago to uncover how millions of dollars are being lost and what's being done about it. In tonight's Prime Focus, we bring you Gold Grifters from WABC investigative reporter Dan Krauth.
Chris Owen is a Vietnam veteran who traveled the world. He worked his entire life to save for retirement in Indiana with his wife, Karen.
Karen and I had traveled a number of places, lived a lot of places, and then in 1989, we moved to Valparaiso, Indiana. And Northwest Indiana was a good spot to live.
Chris and Karen hope to spend decades of their retirement together. They moved hours away to live near their son and hope to travel the globe soon after. But that next chapter would never happen. Karen was diagnosed with breast cancer. Then the COVID-19 pandemic hit.
And so all of our plans for travel and everything kind of went out the window. And so it was in February of 2023 that she passed away. And so it's been pretty rugged.
Probably one of the reasons I was so susceptible to what happened to me.
Owen believes the loss of his wife led him to falling victim to a scam that would cost him $80,000 and led him to becoming an undercover operative to try to put a stop to an international fraud ring, a scheme that has stunned authorities.
I have never seen a scam to this magnitude, as intricate and as detailed as this, that can target so many individuals across the entire United States.
Have you ever investigated a crime like this before? No, this is pretty unique.
A scheme that has led to some behind bars over gold bars.
Hello, this is a free call. An inmate at the Nassau County Jail.
Tonight, ABC News investigates gold grifters, the scam that is on the rise, targeting people across the country. Gold is worth more now than ever before, and people are stockpiling the precious metal in record numbers.
With inflation stubbornly high, some people are looking to gold as an investment.
And business is booming at gold stores. As the value of gold has gone up, scammers have taken notice. Last year, victims of gold scams reported losses of $126 million, according to the FBI.
Everybody knows gold is worth something.
So how are swindlers taking advantage of this gold rush? One day you're browsing the internet when you see something like this, a pop-up message saying your personal information has been compromised. You call and speak to someone posing as a tech company representative or federal agent.
The victim is told, hey, your money's being used to engage in money laundering or drug sales or child pornography.
Some victims, like Owen, will even receive what they believe are documents from the FBI, saying the IRS will freeze all your financial accounts if you tell anyone about the situation.
The pop-ups themselves, the documents they're provided, the communications seem so authentic.
Scammers will then convince you to convert some or all of your savings into gold bars and hand them over to the federal government.
The victim thinks that they're on the phone with somebody from the FTC, let's say. That individual is telling the victim, the only way that we can protect your assets is if you withdraw your money from the bank and you go buy gold.
There's a sense of urgency. Your account's compromised right now. You need to move your money right now.
Once the victims have bought the gold bars, they're given detailed instructions.
They told me to wrap it in a box, wrap it with Christmas wrap paper.
Then when the gold is boxed up, their handlers say,
we'll make it super convenient for you. We'll send a courier, a federal courier, to go pick up these gold bars from you.
According to officials and court documents, couriers are individuals recruited to pick up gold bars or cash from victims.
They're giving individuals pickup locations. It may be a grocery store parking lot. It may be a shopping center.
Like this one in Maryland. Take a look at this surveillance video. Watch as an accused courier picks up a box from this car and walks away. Owen says the same thing happened to him in this parking lot near his home.
I asked you for my agent. He nodded. He never said anything to me. He nodded and drove off.
When the courier drove off, so did some of his life savings. The FBI says some couriers play a larger role in the criminal scheme, while others claim they were simply hired to pick up and drop off packages.
So you picked up gold and cash?
Yes.
Didn't that raise any alarm bells to you?
For the first time, ABC News hearing directly from an alleged gold scam courier, speaking out from jail as he faces charges in 2 states. 27-year-old Yash Shah was previously charged with multiple felonies in 2023 related to the gold bar scam. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 5 years probation. It sounds crazy to actually listen to a stranger to convert your cash into gold and hand it over to a complete stranger. But people are doing that.
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds like something out of a movie.
Shaw claims he was hired by someone in India and was paid between $800 and $4,000 to pick up packages. Some of them contained gold.
I'm not like a criminal or anything like that. They was just saying, if you want to make a little more money, you have to go pick up the package and you have to just drop it over there. Nothing else you had to do.
Shaw was living in Long Island, New York, but his attorney says he would travel all over the Northeast as a courier. How many packages do you think that he picked up and dropped off?
If I had to estimate, anywhere from maybe between 5 and 10.
That's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
And a lot of life savings.
It is.
I asked Shaw what he would do with the gold packages after he picked them up. He said he'd often take them to the Diamond District in New York City. After some time, Shaw says he became suspicious.
I was feeling like, I don't want to do this because I was feeling like something weird things.
He was arrested in November in New York for his alleged involvement in a Maryland case and is being held without bond.
I don't even know how they were scamming and why they were scamming. I was feeling like very guilty and I'm feeling very wrong about that too.
Well, I want to be clear. Yash's culpability is definitely there. He understands what he did.
Shaw claims he does not know who is pocketing the gold, but says he is fully cooperating with investigators.
There are going to be many layers on this because they're operating from India.
FBI officials are on the ground in India, investigating call centers they say are linked to the scam.
The tech support pop-up that initiates the whole scam emanates from a call center in India. So we have a lot of focus on India with a lot of these illegitimate call centers.
We've been able to link at least 2 call centers in India that we are targeting.
While law enforcement overseas looks into the criminal organizations that run the call centers, authorities all over the United States are tracking down suspected couriers. Some couriers are being sentenced to several years in prison after police sting operations. But in Indiana, it wasn't a detective who went undercover.
I was a bit nervous at first.
It was Chris Owen.
I was just anxious. I didn't know where he'd be coming from or anything like that.
After Owen handed over $80,000 in gold bars, scammers contacted him again, asking for more.
And then they came back and started again. Now we need to put the rest of the money away in our secure vault with your other money. That's when I knew that this was a con.
After going to his local police and FBI, authorities had Owen go undercover and arrange a meetup with the courier. The suspected courier, Abdul Mohammed, was eventually hit with state and federal charges, but prosecutors say he fled the country. A not guilty plea was entered on his behalf. Officials say they're looking to target and arrest all the individuals behind the scheme.
We are absolutely looking for the next level, those individuals who have come up with this entire scheme, who are repeatedly engaging and targeting victims here in the U.S. and specifically Montgomery County, Maryland.
You're pretty affluent by most standards. You got some dough. They're always coming after the dough.
Police and prosecutors are now traveling to senior communities like this one in Maryland. It sits right next to a shopping center where a victim handed over gold bars to a courier.
I think that one of the main thing anybody who's in law enforcement can do against any scams, particularly those that target our seniors, is to advise them and to educate them about what those scams are.
The FBI issuing an urgent warning to anyone who uses the internet.
Never click on sites that you're not familiar with. Take a beat. Talk to trusted family members, friends. Does this seem right?
Chris Owen is still trying to put the pieces together.
And it did look real. It felt real.
He never thought a sophisticated overseas scam would come right to him.
They have no conscience about what they're doing. None. All they're in it is for the money. And whether they ruin lives or not, whether they take all people's funds or not, it doesn't matter to them at all.
Our thanks to WABC investigative reporter Dan Krauth. Coming up here on ABC News Live Prime, AI models, are they projecting the ultimate unrealistic body standard? The new backlash for one of the world's highest regarded fashion magazines for featuring models that are not real. Paul Wesley is stepping into a strange new era of his career, portraying a young version of iconic Star Trek character James T. Kirk. His conversation with our Linsey Davis about the role. Why UCLA is losing federal funding. The NFL debuts a new tool for games, and the reboot of a long-running show is coming to an end. These stories and more in tonight's rundown. UCLA's chancellor says the school was notified it would be losing some of its federal research funding over claims of anti-Semitism and bias. Chancellor Julio Frank said hundreds of grants may be lost as a result. UCLA reached a $6 million settlement earlier this week to resolve a lawsuit which claimed the school allowed pro-Palestinian demonstrators to prevent Jewish students and faculty from accessing certain parts of campus. 4 flight attendants on board an Alaska Airlines flight which had its door plug blown out are suing Boeing. The attendants said they suffered personal and permanent injuries from the incident in January of last year. An attorney representing them told ABC News that they deserve to be wholly compensated for the experience, allegedly caused by Boeing's negligence in the 737 MAX production process. Boeing declined to comment. A Florida jury determined Tesla was partly responsible for a deadly 2019 crash involving its autopilot system, ordering the company to pay $243 million in damages. The lawsuit stems from an incident during which a Tesla driver using autopilot took his eyes off the road to look for his phone. The car sped through an intersection and killed a 22-year-old woman while also injuring a man. The jury assigned 33% of the liability to Tesla and the remainder to the driver. Tesla says it plans to appeal. One of the 2 girls involved in a 2014 stabbing attack against a classmate tied to the fictional character Slender Man is being moved to a new facility. A Wisconsin judge approved a plan for now 22-year-old Morgan Geyser to be moved from a psychiatric hospital to a supervised facility. Just more than 10 years after she and Anissa Wire stabbed a classmate 19 times. The NFL debuted its new primary first down measurement system during last night's Hall of Fame game, the first preseason game of the year. First downs until now have traditionally been measured by officials using chains, but last night's game used Sony's virtual Hawkeye technology, which the league says will accurately and efficiently measure the distance between the ball and line to gain. And just like that, it's over. Showrunner Michael Patrick King announced on Instagram that the ongoing 3rd season of the Sex and the City revival will be the last, and the remaining 2 episodes will be a 2-part series finale. King said the decision was made while writing the last episode of the season, but he held off on announcing it so it didn't overshadow the fun of watching this season. The last episode airs August 14th. A 6-year-old boy is recovering after a close encounter with a Pacific octopus at the San Antonio Aquarium in Texas. His mother sharing pictures of his arm covered in purple bruises. You see it there. She says the octopus clung on and wouldn't let go. 3 employees helped to get the boy free. The aquarium's website says guests are allowed to feed and gently touch the octopus. You'll hear from the mother and son tomorrow on GMA. There is growing controversy over the latest issue of Vogue, which includes a Guess clothing ad that uses AI models. Now, some longtime readers are canceling their subscriptions and even calling for a boycott.
Take a wild guess. Is this a real model or AI? These images from Guess's latest ad campaign sparking controversy across the fashion world after the clothing brand featured AI-generated models. Some of the images even appearing in Vogue.
The fact that they are using fake women in their magazines, speechless.
This doesn't make me want to buy anything.
We want to look at real people in magazines. All of these models are going to be out of work. All of these photographers are going to be out of work.
London-based AI marketing agency Seraphine Valora was behind the creation of the AI models, whose names are Vivian and Anastasia. They say they're not in the business of replacing the modeling industry.
We are here to coexist together, and we will always see photography, stylists, and everyone involved in a photo shoot as an incredibly important, the heart of fashion is photography. We will never challenge that.
This is meant to just supplement and to add, a new avenue of marketing.
The agency and guests also facing criticism for perpetuating unrealistic standards of beauty, something experts say can have a negative impact on young girls and women.
The more we're exposed to these images, they become normalized to us, and we start to basically idealize these images that don't actually exist. And so then we compare to them and we feel inadequate.
But Serafine Valora says they're just catering to their clients' vision and creating content people react to.
And we are not here to change what their brand is. We are here to adapt to their needs and create something beautiful for each brand.
What does people respond to? Beautiful women, things that look surreal, things that are very stunning. And when we get this backlash, we're like, well, that's what you responded to. If you had responded to other types of beauty, we would have done that.
ABC News has reached out to Vogue and guests. We have not heard back. A series on Paramount Plus is boldly going where no one has gone before. There's your hint. Actor Paul Wesley, who plays Lieutenant Kirk in the series Star Trek Strange New Worlds, sat down with Linsey Davis to talk about the new season and research that went into playing such an iconic role.
Time tonight for the latest in our series Streamlined, where we take you behind some of the biggest films and TV series hitting screens worldwide, taking place roughly 7 years before the original Star Trek series. Paramount Plus's Star Trek Strange New Worlds is back for season 3, and actor Paul Wesley returns to continue his portrayal of the infamous Captain Kirk, originally played, of course, by William Shatner. The series takes us back to before the legendary captain's promotion, when he's still figuring things out. Let's take a look.
Medical team to the bridge. This is the USS Farragut. We need immediate assistance. We've taken heavy...
Sir, something's interfering with the comm signal. I'm trying to identify the source.
It's coming from that.
Actor Paul Wesley joins us now. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So for those who are not in the know, you play the younger version of Lieutenant Kirk before he becomes captain of USS Enterprise. What kind of research did you endure, really, to take on in order to play this iconic role?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, obviously, I rewatched every single episode of the original series, twice. The show is so iconic. Obviously, it's such a huge part of American history, TV history. And the role of James T. Kirk is, arguably one of the most famous roles in television. So my goal was to, how do I differentiate myself? How do I offer something new? How do I bring something fresh to the table in terms of telling Kirk's story before?
And we know that William Shatner gave his blessing. He posted on social media, "Keep my ship and crew safe, Captain. Congratulations." What traits from his original portrayal did you keep? And what did you decide? I'm going to kind of make this more my own.
Yeah, that tweet meant so much to me. It was such a touching moment because he didn't have to do that, and it was very classy. So from his performance, 1960s television was, I guess, much more. I don't know. I suppose it was much more theatrical in a way, in a good way. And television now is so reliant on VFX and sound and music and editing, and it's much more sort of like modern day filmmaking, obviously. And so I suppose I had to keep that in mind a little bit. I wanted to offer, I guess, more. I don't know. I guess William Shatner is so unbelievably confident in his portrayal of Captain Kirk, and it's so undeniable, his charm and confidence. And I thought, well, my version of Kirk isn't captain yet. So should I make him perhaps a little less sure-footed, maybe a little more vulnerable, And I wanted to sort of bring that perspective to Kirk. So you see him learning how to become captain. You see him learning how to get his confidence,
And the series really has always had the freedom to explore different timelines, dimensions, genres. How does that, the opportunity to really have a blank slate every time, how do you approach that creatively?
The writers do such an incredible job of using their imagination to tell for storytelling. And I think that's what made Star Trek, the original series, so special, because every time they're exploring a strange new world, no pun intended, you're meeting a new alien life form, you're meeting a new type of species. And so all of these things are sort of playground for curiosity and adventure, and also to shed light on society. And that is what makes Star Trek so special, and why people relate to it, because it always is a metaphor for something in our real world, and people, but viewed through the lens of space adventure and through optimism and inclusion. And so my job as an actor is just to honor what the writers are putting on the page, and they make my job a hell of a lot easier.
Many people know you from the Vampire Diaries. How do you transition from something like that to this brand new world?
I welcomed it. Obviously, the Vampire Diaries was such an iconic show in its own right. A huge sort of YA fantasy, definitely a different demographic. And I got off the show, and for years I'd been like, gosh, how do I find a role that is ever going to be of the magnitude of the Vampire Diaries in terms of just how well known it became? And Captain Kirk, or Lieutenant Kirk, I should say, landed in my lap, and it just felt like such a blessing. I was able to sort of take on a different, more, for lack of a better word, mature role. Obviously, he's an older, he's not in high school, obviously. Right. And it just felt like a natural fit for me, given my age, and what I wanted to embark on in my career. So very grateful.
Paul, thank you.
Thank you
so much. You can watch Paul Wesley as Lieutenant James T. Kirk on Star Trek Strange New Worlds, now streaming with new episodes every Thursday on Paramount+.
That is our show for this hour. I'm Stephanie Ramos. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.